This conference is at the instance of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, to discuss the role of the judiciary in the sustainability of democracy in Nigeria. Present here are leaders of political parties, senior legal practitioners, and members of the civil society organization. The IPAC chairman sets the tone for the conversations, citing some developments in the country's judicial system that need urgent attention.
There seems to be the anarchy and rebellion in the temple of justice, conflicting court orders and judgment by courts of coordinate jurisdiction. It calls for urgent judicial reform to save the judiciary and restore its integrity and honor as the temple of justice and the last hope of all aggrieved people.
The keynote speaker is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Jibrin Okutekba. He underscores the importance of the independence of the judiciary for democracy to survive.
Nigerian politicians are far too removed from the people. And that is the reason the judiciary was given responsibility to hold you accountable. But unfortunately, it appears that if you can't beat them, you must join them. Our electoral jurisprudence needs to be looked into, and I must commend Parliament because they done a lot.
However, other participants are advocating the urgent need for individual and institutional reforms in order to protect Nigeria's democracy.
Almost all our institutions of democracy are weak, and we continue in vicious circles. Even if the judiciary is reformed, if IPAC is not reformed, even the common man has to be reformed because he too is not an honest man. We talk about the judiciary as the last hope of the government. Why is the political parties not the last hope of the government? Why is IPAC not the last hope of the government? We want a perfect judiciary in a perfect system and in a perfect country.
The general consensus here is that it is impossible for democracy to thrive when institutions are weak. Hence the call for an urgent need to strengthen institutions such as the electoral body and the judiciary.
So indeed, we're going to talk about all those issues and more. And Mr. Yusuf Dantale is here with us. He is the chairman of IPAC. Good morning. Thank you for coming today.
Morning.
You know, right there when they were speaking about some things and then that of the judiciary came through, it immediately let so many people remember how the last elections went, how so many were looking up to see which way would the judgments go. Then after that, the ones that came through with the governorship elections, the House of Rep, National Assembly, judiciary always has a huge role to play. So there you were talking about that kind of reform, then INEC, all in all, to ensure that our democracy is actually stronger, because if those institutions are strengthened, it becomes stronger. So let's start from the judiciary. What was the overarching mindset in the whole? Was it that something needed to change, that they didn't like the way things have been so far?
Thank you. Good morning. We are Nigerians. We have no other home apart from this country. And democracy is expected to be government that is representative, that is responsive, that is agreeable to majority of the citizenry. But what we see, the people are expected to choose their leaders in atmosphere of peace, in atmosphere devoid of crisis, even though there will be, but that is manageable crisis. But today, we have a situation where the system is drifting towards something else. We have been able to sustain this democracy for about 25 years, and the democracy, cannot be compared to the best military administrations. We don't want to go back to the days of the military. So what we need to do as in the Party Advisory Council is to identify what we need to do to deepen democracy. And we think we should start from the judicial arm of the government that they are expected to be sanctified. The judiciary is the ministers of the Temple of Justice are supposed to be men who are above board, who will dispense justice without looking into anybody's face.
So is it that some members in the room thought that the judiciary is not as independent as they want it to be?
Yes, I believe so. And that is what, from the keynote address, you can see that the judiciary is not as independent as it's supposed to be. You look at what happened in Rivers, and it's happening, still happening in Rivers, and happened in Kano recently. It's embarrassing to the system. It's embarrassing to democracy, it's embarrassing to Nigerians. And it's not just about democracy, it's about the economy. For any investor, now the government of this country, the president have gone out of the country asking investors to come and invest in Nigeria. No investor will respect you. No investor will believe you, to trust you to come and invest in your society if it is seen, it's obvious that you don't respect your own laws.
I want to be able to talk a little bit about, reform, because that's what the call is for, reforms. When it comes to these conflicting court judgments, and we've seen it all over the country, really. What kind of reforms can stop this from happening? Because we hear senior judges say, this was irresponsible. You shouldn't have done this. Be careful. We hear those warnings. For actual enforcement or reforms, what kind of reforms do you think can happen here?
Is it this reform? It is not just the judiciary alone. Even the political class should be reformed. The executive need reformation. The legislation need reformation. But what we are saying, the judiciary, that is supposed to be the bastion of democracy, that's supposed to be the bulwark to regulate the excesses of politicians, we need to start from there. Today, we have the National Judicial Commission that's supposed to be a bridle, or the umbrella body that will bridle the excesses of our judicial officers. I am saying that they are not doing what they are supposed to do, or maybe the Constitution do not empower them to punish erring judicial officers. There are good things in the judiciary. We have a lot of good things that came out of the judiciary. Recently, we had a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court about the autonomy, financial autonomy of local government, which is applauded all over. So we need more of these things. Let me tell you something. I was in China, and I wanted to go into business with some of my friends, and I asked them. We were supposed to go into agreement. And I said, now I'm not a Chinese indigene. So if you breach this thing and I'm not here, what happened? And then my friend told me, what we do here is different from what you do in your country. A judicial officer, person went back to history. A judicial officer delivered judgment, and it was discovered that judgment was influenced. It was influenced. There was judgment without justice. So what they did after investigation, the judicial officer, that particular judge, was executed. He was skinned, and then his skin was dried, and his own son was made. So, the judge to succeed his father, and he was sitting on the skin of his father, the dry skin of his father, to deliver judgment. So that you see that what happened to your father can equally happen to you. I'm not saying we should begin to kill our judges, but that's to tell you the sanctity, the symbol of that institution.
I mean, some people say, sometimes that's the language people can understand. If we keep hearing about the corrections, this is wrong, and listening to Mr. Okutekpa yesterday was really disappointing, because he showed that, like you mentioned, that independence of the judiciary is supposed to be the one that provides justice for the people. That independence is not exactly, it's questionable.
Yeah.
How can we stop that from happening? How do we stop this interference? Is it possible? Do we have to start killing people first?
God forbid.
So what do you think can happen?
After the roundtable, a communique was generated. Unfortunately, I didn't come with a copy of it. Maybe we'll make it available to you afterwards. Yeah. And then recommendations of what need to be done. And then that started from the appointment of judicial officers, their promotion, and the punishment afterwards. And because as long as judicial officers are not punished, some of them are not punished, we will continue to have what we are having.
There's another angle. Pardon me to jump in. Much as we say, yes, we need to get it right with the judiciary, for instance, political parties. First, we see the fight, the tussle, the whatever they do about internal democracy. In fact, they spend almost all of this money they amass here and there is to get the ticket of the party. So the politicians also tell themselves the truth. Did they look in the mirror and say, yes, while we want other institutions to function, we need to do better than what we are doing today?
Thank you. This is a holistic phenomenon. I am not exempting the politicians. The problem of this country as we are today emanated from the politicians. But why we are talking about the judiciary is when people vote who they want, the judiciary shouldn't be the one to announce or bring people. They shouldn't allow themselves to be influenced by the money bags to bring people, those who are not actually that were voted into power through court orders and counter court orders, as you see in Rivers, as you see in Edo recently, and even in the management of political parties. You see, we must have to look at this thing from the foundation of the problem, which I think it is the monetization of the political system and the lucrativity of political office holding in Nigeria. We should begin to look at the allowances of executive and legislative officers. So what happened recently, the protests, we're talking about hunger, but it's just the people protested within the ambit of the law, but somehow there was infiltration by the bad elements who wanted, which is not acceptable to us because we don't have anywhere to run to apart from. But as long as the right thing is done, we won't have that.
Should we not also actually focus on, number one, instead of talking maybe in isolation about judiciary, make sure this and this is done, there's a question as to how are the judges appointed? People talk about politicians also influencing how they come on stream, because if they come on stream through a particular platform, chances are that they will be beholden to a certain group. Shouldn't we also say, listen, we need to change that one as well?
That's one of the recommendations in the communique yesterday.
Okay.
Yes, I will make it available to you, because the appointment of a judicial officer has been influenced by politicians. Maybe some politicians are appointing their wives, their relations, their children, and you don't expect the person to do otherwise. At least definitely there will be influence.
Who is going to implement this communique? This recommendation to who?
It's Nigerians, National Assembly.
To the National Assembly.
To all stakeholders, even the executive arm. Because what we need to do, what we want to achieve is, we just started, this is the first IPAC roundtable, so we have more of this coming. We are going to do among the politicians, the executive arm, among the legislative arm. What we need to understand is that spirit of nationalism, politically and economically, must be strengthened among Nigerians. So,
like, maybe you could give us some of the main points in that communique. You've mentioned one about the appointment of judges.
Yes.
Okay, what other things are there?
One is the appointment of the judges and their promotion. I don't have the whole thing in my head, but I think I'll be able to. So I won't be able to say anything.
Is there anything about INEC in terms of, do we unbundle INEC? What do we do?
Yes, it's one of the recommendations too. It's one of the recommendations too is to go back to Uwe's report.
Okay.
Yes, then some of these things are captioned in the Uwe's report. The unbundling of INEC is there, and even the State Independent Electoral Commission, we see as a lot of question mark that we have been advocating for its removal.
You want removal of CS?
Yes, because the State Independent Electoral Commission is another evil, and it then to democracy.
You want INEC to be unbundled. Now you're bundling them with another one.
Yeah, no, if INEC is unbundled, not what unbundling INEC does not mean. The conduct of election should be saddled. A different arm of INEC should handle conduct of election, another with the registration of political parties. So these are the things we are proposing.
Ayo.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Mr. Anthony, let me ask you one issue, perhaps also part of the relics of the protests that's gone by. In all of these conversations that we've been having, where is youth inclusion?
Thank you. Yesterday, if you look among the discussants, we have youths, though they are female, a lot of them are female, not a male, but we're in the process of organizing another roundtable for the youth So IPAC is about coming up. We want to write to the executive arm, the president in particular, to see that we need to sit down with the youth across the 777 local government in Nigeria, and then let's have the president sit if it is possible. Let's even discuss as Nigerians, because it appears that the representatives of the people are not really doing what they are supposed to do. You are aware of argument between state governors and some ministers that some bags of rice, even though we see that palliative is not, there are not solutions to the current problem of Nigeria. But a situation where the governors and the ministers will say, we gave you this, and they say, no, we did not receive it. And such argument, there are situations where you see some of the rice or the grains given to Nigerians are being repackaged by those that are supposed to, ordinarily supposed to provide these things for the people. So there are lots of questions that will need to be addressed, and we are in the process of it. We just started.
I'll stay on that for a bit, Mr. Dantale, and here is why. We've mentioned it a couple of times on this program. 46 years ago, during the Ali Must Go contest, Ali Must Go protest, which was led by students at the time because schools were they increased their fees, the tuition fees which they needed to pay, and the effect of it came as a result of the high cost of living at the time. 46 years ago, it was led by young people. The people who were in government at the time are not in government today in any way, manner, shape, or form. We're talking about 46 years ago. Some of those young people probably also got into government and came out of government at the time. The reason I'm asking about young people, and I'd like you to speak to it more futuristically, is it seems that we are not speaking the same language with the young people. The people who complained many years ago, some of them are in government today, some are not. What's the assurance we have that the ones who will get into government in another 30 years from now are not going to be complaining about the same things, that the young people of their days are not going to be complaining about the same things they are complaining about today? That's why I'm talking about youth inclusion from now for the long term, not just for now.
I agree with you to a certain extent. First, you see the way it is today, the economy is not healthy. And why do I say so? A lot of our industries, domestic industries, are not faring well because of factors of production that is not really in tandem with basics of production. Today, you see the cost of petroleum has affected almost everything. And even the ones that are employed, people that are employed, you will agree with me that their basic earnings cannot give them the basic needs of life. So it's something that we'll sit down as Nigerians to look at what should be done from the legislative arm to the executive arm. Sincerely, we have a lot of unemployed youth, and it's a major problem. And what we see recently is an indication that so many things are wrong, and the youth need to be carried along. We need to sit and discuss with the youth to see where they should be accommodated in the scheme of affairs going forward.
Can that, be democratized, so to speak? We have governors in all 36 states. And I'm asking this because, from your position, you should be able to say, okay, well, maybe this is a way we can, address young people. Yesterday, we hosted a human rights activity with a much younger person. And one of the solutions that she was, proposing was, look, why don't the governors of the various states have meetings with young people, make a call for representatives of young people all across the nation, call them into a room and say, look, this is what the problem is, and just have conversations with them for their understanding, and not just for now, but for the future. I say that again. I'm asking this and I'm reiterating this because there's a huge trust deficit right now, that whichever person is in whatever state as governor or as chairman or with any elective position right now, the trust deficit is very low. And what's to say that we're not going to have the same cycle continue futuristically? What is fundamentally wrong with the governance system such that whoever gets into government, the people don't trust? And most of the time we look at the elected officials. We don't look at the civil service, the systems that they have to work with. for the development and the good governance that people are clamoring for?
You see, this problem is holistic. What you are saying is one dimension to the problem, but what we are looking at, we need to have a baseline to start from. The process of electing our officers, executive and legislative officers in Nigeria. We should make politics, political office in Nigeria, election less lucrative. We should work to reduce the influence of money in getting people into offices. A lot of our youth that you see today, they do not have the wherewithal to contest election. We are looking at the nomination of and every other thing about the process of electioneering in Nigeria. We need to reduce the influence of money. So maybe by the time we have that, it will bring in a lot of youths into the system. But still, there should be legislation which we are working towards to accommodate, at least let there be specifics, or where the youth, what they are supposed to occupy in the political system. They must be accommodated. And while doing that, we have to ensure that the economy should be a bit healthy. And all these things, the judiciary have a lot of role to play in ensuring that some of these things are achieved.
Talking about the leadership recruitment process, Mr. Dantale, there are those who wonder whether or not the baseline qualification for the different offices are significant. You want to recruit anyone into civil service, the person has to have a minimum of, of being a graduate, at least minimum level 6, be it federal or state governments, federal or state levels. But you want to employ someone who is a lawmaker. You're asking for the person for something as low as school certificate. Is that part of your consideration?
Thank you so much. This is, of course, it is, because it's worrisome. Where you have, I have seen situations where somebody who just graduated, a youth corper who have no experience whatsoever, the next thing he wants to do is to get nomination form to become a House of Reps or Assembly member. It is funny, and for me, it is anachronistic, and these things need to be checked. And then you have someone whose qualification, who is just a secondary school certificate holder, going to make policies for people who are successful in this, some people who have nothing, who have never achieved anything. Some of these things are things we should look at. At least those, apart from educational qualification, there should be other criteria. This person seeking his office, what are his pedigree? What is his pedigree? What has he achieved? Has he been in business before? What has he done? Because today, politics is seen as business on its own, that people do not go to serve the people, but they go just to enrich themselves. And then it's obvious that most of the people in elective offices are far from the people that they represent. But the people too, the weaponization of the system is another thing that we are looking at.
All right.
This is the beginning, and we will continue to do what we have to do to deepen democracy. But so, expect more from IPAC.
In that case, we expect that if it hasn't already, IPAC will do something about the transmission of results.
Of course, it's one of the things. It's one of the recommendations yesterday.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So we should be able to see
we'll get it across to you as soon as possible.
Lovely.
Thank you.
That's line. So Yusuf Dantale, Chairman IPAC. Thank you for coming on this.
You're welcome.